Well, I guess it starts with my background, and which is all resources. First as a geologist, and then into mineral processing and mining in North America and in both the U.S. and Canada. Part of the reason I guess I chose geology was that I didn't want to sit behind a desk. I didn't want to be told that's right or that's wrong. It's kind of why God gave geologists two hands, because if they looked at a rock, they said on one hand it could be this, on the other hand it could be that. And that's what I like, to kind of make my own shots. So I did love, and I still love, the mining industry, the exploration, the hunt for new things, creating new things, new ways of doing things. In my career in resources, I got involved in some of the earliest things, using the first time computers were ever being used for geology and mining and things like that. And I was on the forefront, although I was not trained in it. I just realized they were great tools to have. So that's my background. So I was sent to the company I worked for, the American company I worked for, sent me out to Perth in 1978 as secondment to Mount Newman, which was the forerunner really for BHP today. And it was to help them gear up and do new things. We fell in love with Perth, my wife and I, relatively newly married. We were only sent here for a 6-month job, but we've never gone back, so created our own thing. One of the things, I guess, many years ago, I realized that WA in particular, like many other places that I've worked in Canada and the US, smaller towns were solely dependent directly and indirectly on resources, the mines that were there. And I started fretting about the future for Western Australia when the iron ore runs out, or it's cheaper to mine somewhere else, or the oil and gas runs out, et cetera, the gold, everything that's made us and we still live on. And neither the governments, the industry, nobody is paying attention to what's going to happen in the next 50 years. Everybody's concerned about the short term, 3 to 5 years. Whether you're CEO of a company or you're in government, it's short term. Nobody's doing anything for the future. So I thought, well, my foundation, having done well out of resources, my foundation was, it's all about education, and mostly education for disadvantaged kids, those from the bush. Whether they're sick or whether it's just education to get to them because they don't have the advantages of those here in Perth. So I'm thinking about, where is the future for WA if we keep this dependence on resources? Where's the education at the opposite end of disadvantaged kids? There are smart people, but what, you're going to get them more PhDs? No, that's not the way. What can you give them? It's a mindset to change the way they think, to change the way they evolve. So you've got to remove the academic mindset of the researchers in the lab and writing for grants and living off the government and the taxpayers, and they got to start creating and translating their research. So I started doing a lot, my own research, things that are going on. And I find that year after year after year, there's a big review called the Global Innovation Index. It's not for profit, no government, whatever. So Australia overall punches well above its weight in the OECD in our knowledge creation. But it ranks about with Mongolia, the bottom of the ladder, with what it does with that knowledge, with the creation, with the export of that high base. And I thought, well, this all comes back to our smart people, to unis, and how do you take these smart people and give them a different mindset? And I thought, well, I can do that. I can create a group, and for lack of a better name, we called it the Center for Entrepreneurial Research and Innovation. We don't do the research and innovation. It's the ones we bring in and give that mindset and how to build a company, how to build a startup, how to do it properly. And it's more about getting customers, where 90% of the other all the other programs around, whether they're at the universities or independents or whatever, it's all about the pitch for money. Forget about whether you can really sell your product. Give us some money, and then we'll see if we can get a customer. No, the way it works is the other way around. So we work very hard at getting them that whatever you have, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, whether it's tech, whether it's medical, whether it's ag, whether it's space, it all comes back to customers. Okay, so it took, our doors have been open over 4 years. We're going into our 5th year. And we probably worked for about 2 years, if not more, perfecting it. So without wanting to recreate the wheel, I recruited Carolyn Williams, who's a PhD in molecular biology, who was working at Perkins at that point in time, as my CEO. And I'd been around the US before, and we both went to MIT, Stanford, to Kansas City, the Kauffman Foundation, to Denver, to the big centers, and looking at the Mars Institute in Toronto and seeing what was going on. And we said, well, we'll pick up this program here and really amp it up. If it was designed for high school or uni kids, take it up to the next level. To take up with MIT, there's their venture team of mentors to one person or one group, and that's been going exceedingly well for 20 plus years. So we've ingrained that. We did that. We went to MIT and worked with them on that program. With our entrepreneurial mindset program, we did that. We did of course, did a lot of work with the people in the States to establish that. It's a huge program, and just starting in WA. And we've taken bits and pieces from everywhere to put this program together. So I guess I'm the benefactor. I'm the one with donations that was funding it initially and still predominantly fund it. We had a bit of an issue in the early days because we're independent, and as a charitable organization, which CERI is, we don't charge for to come into boot camp, concept of creation, customer development, CO and resident. We don't charge for any of that. We have startup offices. We're only just charging a small fee for, there's the coffee, there's the facilities kind of thing. So we needed, if I was going to attract other funding, which is predominantly from wealthier people's foundations, private ancillary funds, we need a tax status called DGR, deductible gift recipient status 1. Now, universities, teaching facility, registered teaching facilities, hospitals, research institutes, things like that, they're automatically there. They're written in the law. 4 years ago, we had an act. The government thought what we were doing was so good. There was an act of federal parliament granting us this DGR1, specific listing. We're in there. But it was only for 5 years. So I guess when we started the process to renew it or get it permanent, when they saw the metrics of what we had done in those 4 years, the government very recently said, yes, we'll grant you permanent duration. It still needs to attach to, because it's a tax act, it needs to attach to a tax act, and then it goes through Parliament, and we're there. So our longevity in terms of where and how we can derive income is good. We do get a couple of smaller government grants or 50-50 sharing things. But we've recently, this year, attracted our first really big PAF, who's allowed us to add more to our programs, to almost double. I guess this next year, 2 years, we're looking at doubling the number of not number of programs, but the frequency of the programs. So we double the intake. So the bigger the funnel is to get in, the more likely we're going to have the kind of startups we're hoping that will drive the future economy of WA. You never know who's going to be the real winners. There are a few that we're very, very proud of. There's one called Terra 15, and they were our first residents. And they were starting to deal with fiber optics, fiber, like your broadband, as a sensor. So the minutest of vibrations, we wouldn't even feel them, they can pick up and they can see what's going on. And they thought that because of how and what we do, and I don't want to say the word teach, mentor them, they did their pivot and change. And they're now out, I think they've got about a dozen people for them. They've been out for maybe a year. They're in revenue mode. They're starting with the lowest hanging fruit, dealing with the likes of BHP for monitoring their conveyors and rail lines and things like that. And they're keeping it. The security side of this is just incredible. And I think that's the side that is gonna be just amazing. Amazing. They can, if you put fiber, say, around a submarine, say your WA defense, or a ship, and you put it around the hull, there's a lot of vibrations, but they're going to be able to pick up a different vibration in a very, very specific spot. And you're going to say, there's something wrong there. You better go check it out. Those bridges in Italy that collapsed, or the dams in Brazil a couple of years that collapsed. If that had fiber and that was being monitored, those things would never happen. They'd be able to sense them well in advance. So I'm really proud of those guys. So that's the kind of startup we want that will grow and drive. They've from 2 guys not making any money to 10 and making money and going. About the same time they came in, a mature age researcher, a woman, Marion Stern, with her company called Isopogen. She's in Royal Perth, and she's playing with stem cells. So she can take stem cells from any healthy person, treat them in a certain way, and give them as a course to, initially it was with transplant rejection, liver, lung, kidney. 30% of them at very high cost would be rejection. And oftentimes, because they're so rare, those people are going to die because they're not going to get another kidney or lung or whatever. So with her stem cells, rejections have stopped. She finds out that it's curing Crohn's disease. So she's raising some money, and when she gets the larger amounts of money, I'm hoping, and we always had this vision, as she did, that Perth becomes the world center for treating Crohn's. So people will fly in from all over the world to be treated at no cost to our health system, to be able to develop this. And they come in, not only are they being treated and pay for it, but they're in for hotels, for meals, for tourists, for traveling around, because it's not just one course. It might be, you might have 3 courses spread over the, say, 3 to 8 weeks, let's say. So they're here for a period of time. These are the kind of things we need. Another one, unfortunately they stayed academics, was Meldetect. So a simple little blood test to tell you whether you've got melanoma or not. Not waiting for a doctor, it could be too late. Or if you're being treated for the melanoma, if you have it, and they're giving you chemo and it's aggressive melanoma, by the time they'll tell you the drug's working or not, you could be dead, but they can tell you within hours of getting the treatment whether it's working or not. These are the kind of things, more on the medical side, that we're dealing with. On the agricultural side, we have a group they can, to a square meter of ground, can tell you what's happening by remote sensing, everything else, what's happening with that ground and what you need to do to improve your crop, right? Whether it's the fertilizer, type of fertilizer, whatever, or water. Well, we've had, in the 4 years, we've had over 450 people come through. We have 5, pretty much 5 staff, pretty much full-time. We have 2 senior guys who are there maybe 3 days a week, and we have 3 dozen mentors who they volunteer their time for mentoring to the various startups. And a lot of our, outside of our Entrepreneurial Mindset Bootcamp, we draw on lawyers and accountants, IP, patent attorneys, and those kind of people, branding and marketing people, financial people, private equity, to give them an overview of business life. So we have a lot of outside help compared to the number of paid staff that we have. The number of startups, we have 7 startup offices, 3 or 4 of them are single company startups in there. The rest could be shared between 2 or 3, which aren't full-time. We've probably had 20, maybe 2 dozen, 3 dozen startups. Some are still there, some are one-man bands. Quite honestly, I don't know how to measure that success. It will be when I'm long dead, and instead of BHP and Rio Tinto and Woodside and Fortescue, it's going to be these new startups in high tech, in medical, in space, in whatever, material science. It's going to be, those are the companies of the future, right? So I won't be here to see that success, to see the vision being achieved that we set out to achieve. But for now, given that the federal government is giving us this DGR1, permanent DGR1 status, that tells me we're doing okay. Well, in a way, it is success breeds success kind of situation. So the more that we can raise in terms of donations, because I want to keep CERI on a basis where people are being given scholarships to attend. You don't have to. If it's a business, it's a different story. But as a researcher, an academic, it's a different story. What I would hope is that we might have some kind of an early stage venture fund wrapped around CERI, not managed by, but wrapped around CERI, that will invest in the CERI startups. So a bit of venture, there's a bit of social venture capital to that, because you might not get the mega returns of a real venture capital, but you know what you're doing, that the people will have been vetted, which is a hard thing to do for most venture capitalists. But you're investing in the future for your grandchildren with the companies that are coming through today that say they'll stay here and not move over east or not move to the US or the UK. They're going to stay here. So I'm in that time period, a year, 2 years, I'm hoping we'll see enough startups come through CERI that we can say, yep, we can put a fund together to support them And in return, a portion of that fund will go to CERI. Well, it goes hand, like I was saying, you need dollars. We need to get more people. So the 5 people that are currently there, we'll need to double them. We will need, rather than every 4 to 6 weeks running a boot camp, we should be running a boot camp every 2 weeks. And let's say a third. So we have things small. They don't sit there in a lecture hall and listen. It's very interactive, proactive. So 24, 30 people max, it almost gets too hard, but 24 is a good number. So if we get a third to make a contingent for our 14 to 18 week concept creation, where they actually will learn how to build a company. So the more people in, the more we do there, the more companies we can actually get going. The more mentors we're going to need. But as I say, success breeds success. We will get more mentors in. People are just, every person who hears about CERI says, what can I do? What can I do? Because there's nothing in it for me. There's nothing in it for, it's the greater good, and people get it. It's relatively simple. If you think of a triangle, right? The base, this is the entrepreneurial mindset boot camp. It's 2 days. And it teaches you how to think, right? Gives you all that background, right? Yeah. So the next layer on top of the entrepreneurial mindset boot camp is concept to creation, how to form a team, how to talk cross-discipline, how to build a company, the financial, the IP, the intellectual property side. For most of these people, that's very, very, very important. Where to get your finance, how to do the branding, et cetera, how customers. Then on top of that, so we have mentor. That's where, if there's startups, we get the mentoring around them. What we've done this year with Extra, what we've realized is it's about customers. So we've launched a customer development program, which is really, the real startups is now figuring out, well, how do I go and talk to a customer, a potential customer? How do you do that? What do you do? And that's hugely successful. Then the top 3 or 4 of our startups, most of these people have never been a CEO, wouldn't know what it's like. So we have a mature CEO who's done startups, he knows, and we embed him as the CEO in these 3 or 4 startups, and he kicks butt. And he says, well, you guys you're out of here, or this is good, let's take you to the next level. And that's it.